Hello and welcome to the Great White North, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the north. I'm your host, Charles Constantine. With me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello.
How you doing tonight?
Oh, good, good. We're recording real late tonight.
Yeah, super late. It's we've had a late show before, and I think we said it's comfier vibes.
Yeah, except when the neighbors start banging at me. But
Yeah. Well,
you know what? I hate them
do what you got
anyway.
to do. We kind of get this. What would you say? Um, Lo-fi. Gotta talk a little quieter. Don't want to wake people up.
Yeah, maybe I'll throw a little AM crackle on in post.
Oh, that'd be fancy.
Yeah. And what you do is you turn the EQ, you slam it down in the low band and in the high
Uh-huh.
band, and you just kind of crank it right up, I think it's around 2000 hertz, and it sounds just like AM radio.
Man, that sounds cozy as hell.
Yes, yes. And yeah, it's been a little while. We've been on a little
Has
break
been.
here. I've been slacking. Actually, we got another episode in the can I still haven't released, but you'll be seeing that one soon, and you'll be seeing this one soon too. This is going to be a
Well,
recap.
you hopefully be seeing that one before you see this one.
Yeah, definitely. Because
You should have already watched that one. But yeah, we'll be getting back on track here. We just a little bit of a break. Lots of stuff going on, and I think at least for me, I don't know. You sound like you've been a little bit busy too, right?
yeah, um, well, just refactoring my life around a few new commitments.
Yeah, I'm just picking up some extra work and lots of events going on night to night. So now that that sort of died down a bit, we can get back on track. I think we'll be more dialed in this time around. And this is I guess our aim of this show is to kind of recap this past. I guess we can call it another season. We'll call it season two, Great White North, season two, getting recapped. Look at
Hmm.
that, we're rolling already.
So that's episodes 15 through 29, I want to say.
Wow, can't believe you remember that. It's good.
Yeah, we'll get into that a bit later. For now, we just want to talk about a bit of a news article here that was going around today.
Yeah, let's hit on this because this is the story of his name's Elijah Dewitt, and this is like the long and short of it is this 18-year-old white kid. You could literally just say, "Hey, this is like a Chad, like football playing white kid gets shot by two blacks in front of his girlfriend while they're on a date." Um, that's the long and the short of it, and it's a very sad story. But I guess a couple things to dig at on this. So obviously, number one, like the media coverage, the response to this, right? We can do the hypocrisy thing all we want. Everyone knows it. Okay, like where's the outrage? Where's the riots? Where's the multi-million-dollar funeral for this kid that had the world ahead of him? He had the NFL looking at him. He had I think Cam Newton, one of the NFL quarterbacks. You know, like apparently thought fondly of this kid's playing, and yeah, seemed to be a sort of pillar kind of guy. There's a video of him like power cleaning 270 pounds. Like, this kid's 18 years old. He's
Wow.
absolutely like again complete nothing but potential, world ahead of him, and shot by these two just like black
Degenerate
criminals,
black
like
criminals.
literal criminals with nothing ahead of them. Like they have nothing to offer, and yeah, it's tough to say much on that except for like it's just sad, man.
Yeah,
It's just sad.
for sure. I guess the more interesting part is the family's reaction.
Yeah,
A lot of virtue signaling there.
basically, what's the family comments on this are nothing but we forgive the killers and we don't want to have hate in our home. So yeah, it sucks, but I mean we gotta forgive, and that's it. That's basically the extent of these both the parents of this kid, both the parents of Elijah and the girlfriend who had to witness her boyfriend. And keep in mind, this is um this is a couple that's been dating for 5 years. So like they're 18, started at 13. Like so, well, not even high school, like junior high, sweethearts. You don't even see that. You don't see that very often. And these the people, the family, and the girlfriend, and so you could say brainwashed because that's really what this is. Brainwashed in this notion that if someone commits a crime and they're part of a protected class, then you just have to let it go because if you don't, that's considered hate and that's bad. And they put this veneer of Christian moralism over top of it. But it's I would say, and we could I think if we draw on our past episodes like the resistance to evil by force when we discuss that text, we can see that this is not the appropriate response whatsoever, or at least we can get into some of the details about why it's what the nuance to this is. But clearly, this whole response to the family is um, almost spits in this kid's face, I would say.
Absolutely. I'd be livid. I'd go haunt them. I would haunt the shit out of them if I was Elijah.
I think that'd be a fair response. Kind of what is your feeling like? Obviously, other than haunting them, like based on what we've
it
read.
Sounds like a story we've heard before, maybe with like Molly Tibbetts and the Taco Dad.
Yep.
The murder itself is not shocking. We see stories like it every day. It's shocking that we allow such things to occur in our societies on a regular basis. I think a good chunk of this program would be just doing what little we can to try and make a society where that doesn't happen, or at least where justice could happen swiftly when it does.
Yeah. Well, it's like that thing. I think guy on Twitter, Indian Bronson, hammers this all the time, and I agree with him to some extent. He says it's triple the prison population. Like so much of this violent, like nonsensical crime. From the sounds of it, these two blacks asked if this guy had weed on him, so possibly a botched robbery just for some like shitty drug, but like this notion of triple the prison population, get these people in jail as soon as they start committing crimes, and then you won't catch. Then we won't be ending up in a situation where they are shooting people over a little bit of weed. And I think this is what they did in New York, right?
With the stop and frisk.
Yeah, stop and frisk. Put the people that are like skipping the turnstiles, jumping the turnstiles. You put those guys in prison. Those 90% of the time, those are the people that will eventually be the ones committing the crimes later. Now, is that the ideal way to approach a lot of this?
Exactly. I've talked before. I have a fairly big disdain for prison as a method of punishment or justice. So I would inflict other penalties on them. However, I get his idea, and I agree.
Whatever the approach may be, it is catching the misbehavior early on.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't grow into what we see now. When you're so lenient, you give so much ground.
Part of this is, of course, caused by the backlash against police in general, and one of the things is this notion of broken windows policing, where the cops go to where there's broken windows, and that's probably the shitty places where crime's going to occur, and that's frowned upon now, is profiling or whatever, profiling or whatever. Actually, I had a good talk with my mom about this. I was like, we should absolutely profile. Cops should absolutely profile. You know who they are. You walk by them, you know who they are instantly.
You do.
And she's like, well, it's not all of them. I'm like, of course it's not all of them. I'm not saying arrest the black guy in a suit, whatever. unless he's committing fraud on Wall Street or something. No, I mean arrest him too, but that's not what I'm talking about. You know exactly who the criminals are.
Well, and that's the thing with profiling. And you can say it's not, I don't know, evidence based or whatever. Like
Yeah, it
you
is.
have these
The
appearances.
evidence is that they're dressed and looking and acting like criminals do, which is enough
But
at least
but
for
that's the
suspicion.
thing. That's the thing that I know. For some reason, we've deconstructed that completely out of society. Um, but everyone still feels it on an intuitive level, and like the guy that's a criminal when you walk near them, and I'll even I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. If it's a white guy that's acting a certain way, you know that guy's a criminal too. Like
Absolutely.
it's not like it's only
I can spot a
only
meth
applied in
dealer.
one direction. You know who it is,
I can tell by their
and
car.
you can look at the pictures of these guys that committed this killing, and
Why
you would
are they
know them.
allowed to walk free looking like that?
You would know them. Like I wouldn't be anywhere near these dudes. You know, so the teaching people to internalize this, like, oh, I have to get rid of all my prejudices because they're not accurate and they're all based in biases that I've internalized. Well, you're just teaching people to get rid of their defense systems, right? And it sucks. You know what? Maybe you have a false, what is it? False positive.
Yeah.
You assume the wrong guy is, yeah, sure,
Well, then
but
that guy
for
should
every
improve
one of
his
those,
fashion sense and demeanor.
sure,
It's
exactly.
a
And
it's a
for
crime
every
just
for
to
every
act
one
and look how
person
they
you
do.
profile in the wrong direction, there's three people that you profiled right and you saved your life.
Yeah.
Or even on the simpler levels, you see the guy driving down the road and he just looks like a bad driver, and you just stay away from that car because you never
Yeah.
know if the guy doesn't signal or he doesn't shoulder check when he comes near your lane. Like there's a lot of these things are preventative things, and all they're doing is defending you from a bad situation.
You say,
So
we okay. Now they're just going to start dressing better and acting more sociable. Um, well, okay, that would probably actually cure them.
yeah,
If they
like,
started actually having to put some thought into how they dressed and to how
and
they
that's part of
acted
it
around
too.
people,
Is
they'd probably actually become decent people.
that's part of it too. Like I genuinely want these people to just behave better, and their lives will be better for it. One of the things that this the girlfriend brought up, we'll get more into the mentality of the parents and the girlfriend here, but like she said something like, "You don't know how these kids are raised. You don't know what they're going through." But like that doesn't. Why does that matter? Does
Yeah,
that justify
except
your?
that I also do know how they were raised. They're raised by
No, no, but
those women on TikTok who I see. They're
but but even before getting into that, like, does that doesn't justify killing someone? Like, it doesn't matter how badly
right.
you were raised. You don't even like, oh well, he had a bad upbringing, so that might be why he killed someone. Like, that's not an excuse. Do you know how many people I know who've had just brutal childhoods, like abused endlessly, and they never ended up killing someone?
Well, okay, it reminds me of the pedo thing. Like, oh, maybe they're born that way. It doesn't matter. The solution is the same.
Like, it's not that hard to just not kill people, especially like, again, you could say, okay, like, some like deranged serial killer, like brutally mentally damaged forever, and had absolutely like just sick perversions in their brain. We didn't catch it in time, but like that's a lot different than, oh, who knows how he was raised, and this guy's killing someone over some weed. Like,
Yeah.
this person isn't mentally damaged if he's killing someone over weed. He's just a fucking degenerate who's completely useless.
Well,
Like,
if your dog gets rabies from a skunk defending your home, or if he goes and he's trying to steal the neighborhood cat's meow mix and then gets rabies, it doesn't matter. You still got to take him out behind the shed.
yeah. So,
It's irrelevant.
and then again, when this girlfriend is bringing up this whole, oh, well, how you don't know how they're raised. Well, how do we fix how these kids are raised? Like, you're to go into that more would get you accused of racism, and this is the very thing that this family and the girlfriend are trying to stave off. They're trying not to get accused of racism, but hey, how do we solve the way these murderers are raised? What do we do to fix this?
Hmm.
Well, there's some serious questions you got to ask about the communities they're raised in,
Right.
and that might involve some more policing,
Right.
and it might involve some incentives that might sound like racist incentives, might sound like gentrification or something, but whatever the deal is, it requires setting standards for this particular community. But you can't suggest that. You can't suggest that a community, and this is a good thing. Like in my opinion, I want these people, like this is a black community. I want this community to be uplifted, to be better off. I'm happy if they're better off because I think everyone's better off in that situation. But you can't go there because that's race. Wanting the best for these people is apparently it's racist because you're coming from a white supremacist perspective. Like it's just that's why none of these problems are going to get solved in the current paradigm.
Actually, there's a community up north, native community up north that is right now asking for RCMP intervention because they got 3 gangs in a tiny little northern reservation. They're holding up their elders at the gunpoint. How bad does it have to get before the black community itself starts saying, more cops, please, more policing?
Yeah, save us from, yeah.
And at that point, will we save them?
Well, I don't see why not. Like
I would hope so, but will we be able to? Can we now?
I think we could, but it would, again, the actual solution requires an entirely different paradigm. And it would have to admit certain differences. I
know there's some guys from our chats and stuff who are listening to that right now, and the thought going through their head is, you reap what you sow. And
that's cool, but like, don't be a resentful little bitch. Like that's what I would say to them. Like, it sucks that it's gone that far for these certain people, but I mean, being a resentful little bitch and saying they don't deserve compassion, because like that's also not the solution either. And I think people that love getting all edgy about these sort of things and saying, haha, fuck you, you get what you deserve, like, yeah, you're a faggot too. Sorry.
I actually understand the temptation all too well to say that, but I do also acknowledge that the actual moral solution and proper solution is beyond that little ha-ha Nelson laugh.
The other thing too here I wanted to get into before we finish this topic is there's a lot of people saying that the response from the adults, the parents, and even the girlfriend, this like Christian is like this flaw in Christian thinking, and this is why we got to drop this, and this moral system makes you weak because you forgive violent murderers, and no justice gets enacted. But I think, and we might be able to use this to lead, and we'll see where it takes us. But we talked about on resistance to evil by force, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a second season topic.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what did we learn in that book?
Well, that it's okay to resist evil by force.
That's right.
And that's a very Christian. It's backed by Christian morality. But the same people who criticize Christianity for making these people little bitches, they're making the same argument as the people who are like, oh, Christianity only leads to crusades and death. Which is it? Does it make us little bitches, or does it make us war hungry, warmonger, whatever?
Well, and that's where you get this sort of nuanced understanding. And again, I wouldn't call myself any sort of expert. There's a lot more to learn in this field, but I do see a sort of nuance here where these people, when they say forgiveness is for the forgiver. We don't want hate in this house. There's truth in that. Like, you can't sit there and resent and want vengeance, for something that happened that is now out of your control, right? Like, you can't let that eat you up.
Right.
You'll never get over it. So they're correct in that. What I think.
Yeah, they shouldn't just sit there seething the rest of their lives. They should have to move on with their lives at some point.
There's an aspect. there's an aspect of that at number one. I think that's an internal uh, dialogue, right?
Yeah,
That's for you. If you're saying like this father says, the forgiveness is forgiver, then why are you touting it out to the world?
right.
Why are you saying I am? Why do you feel that you need to force this notion upon the rest? Because I
You,
don't think that's necessarily. If the culprit doesn't ask for forgiveness, then you don't have to go and be like, "I am forgiving you. I am forgiving you. Like, listen to me, forgive you." That's not what it's. If it's for you, it's for you.
I would hope they wouldn't be sitting at home pounding their walls, right? And
Yeah,
but I would also hope that they'd be out in the streets demanding justice.
and that's the other part because I mean, the, murder is a sin. Thou shalt not murder. Like you people do receive are expected uh, to receive punishment for this. Like the just action is to apply the rule to the murderer. So justice means that you deal with the murderers accordingly. So this notion that this family is supposed to just let, or and I think this family has done this themselves, where they've presented this notion where they just are apparently, oh well, it's okay, it just happened, but it's okay, and we don't know what those kids were going through, so who cares? That's a complete misreading on their end as well.
Mm. And certainly, probably, I wouldn't shock me either if the journalists were asking leading questions to kind of get these quotes either.
Well, there's that side of things, and there's the whole. They have the entire societal pressure down on them, and there's a particular um, conditioning. There's a social conditioning that's probably been playing on this family as well, and they're probably just like most normal people who just conform to societal standards. So on one end, I can't blame them for conforming to those societal standards, but at the same time, I think if they were really Christian about this, they would be demanding justice. They would keep their forgiveness internal unless these culprits asked for it out loud and showed genuine repentance. Um, but that hasn't happened. So the fact that this body is not even in its grave yet, and the parents are already making this great show of how they forgive the murder over their young son full of potential.
Maybe
Just
they're just
shows
trying
me
to save a couple bucks on a hearse and have him roll his way into his own grave.
that's ruthless.
So this, I think, will be episode 30, Charles. We've come a long way.
Yeah, 30. That's well, I can count that high at least.
Yeah, we still got another. I was gonna say we're out of fingers and toes, and we are. Not getting smarter. That's the nice thing about a late night stream is your brain's just puttering away on idle.
Yep.
Your brain's in the proverbial back parking lot, and cops are coming tapping on the windows with a flashlight. What are you doing there? I'm just enjoying the evening air, officer. That's your brain.
That's basically it. And I mean, who knows? We'll roll through this recap, and we might butcher it, but we might come out with some incredible, groundbreaking new takes and revitalizations of, just
Well,
whatever.
okay. I mean, our very first
brain compartments building
brain compartments building committee.
Psychological constructions of these books.
This is lovely.
Something like that.
Perfect. Okay, because I had a good thought just reading down this list of titles, and we've got a theme of the show and all that. In fact, and it ties back to our first season too. As we've said many times, our first episode ever was about Josh Neal's article on the Hyperverse, the Hyperworld. Sorry, which is to do with the internet and but more than the internet, just our simultaneous connectivity. And he was looking for a hero in that. And this theme has actually resonated throughout the show for all the episodes, but this season really brings it into focus because we
Mm.
study essentially morality, and especially morality given the new technology, or in light of the modern technology. Um, so the first book we read this season was On Resistance to Evil by Force by Ivan Ilyin. Um,
Yeah, and well, I think good that we had a topic where we can kind of touch on that a little bit. But the core takeaway there is yes, it is morally just to resist evil, and the main distinction we got from that was the difference between force and violence. And you could say the modern liberals treat every act of force as an act of violence, but as I think one of the most shining examples of the differentiation here that Ilan gave us is okay. A friend is attempting to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge, and just as he jumps, you pull him down. Maybe he breaks an arm by that use of force, but in reality, you have just prevented evil from occurring. You prevented his because again in the Christian moral system, committing suicide will uh, send you to hell, right?
mhm.
So it's an act of murder of yourself. So you have just prevented a soul from going to hell by doing that. So that is for that you're not committing violence against this individual. You're just using force to resist evil. And so this is completely justified in this moral framing.
And I think we both agreed with the author 100% in his assessment of the morality and in his conclusions.
Yeah, and another key takeaway, and we already touched on this on the show a little earlier, but to understand that it might not be righteous at all times to use force. There might be situations where an execution is justified, but that's always a last ditch option, and it does leave a mark on your soul. And you must approach this in a very careful way so that you don't send yourself into the void while you're at it. And I think that's where a lot of people in our sphere get caught up, is they get so sucked into the resentment and hatred even that they are willing to become ghouls, you could say, in the name of their own interests. And that's I think that's a thing that we should be avoiding, because if we as we tie back into this notion of the heroic, you don't. I know it's such a cliche, but um, yeah, you don't want to turn yourself into the villain because you find you kind of meme yourself into a joy uh, of using force that turns into violence mindlessly.
True. So then the second book we read was Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Massage, which is just a sort of gloss of McLuhan's ideas. This one's was fascinating to me and will become extremely relevant when we open up season 3 by with Simulacra and Simulation by Baudrillard.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say it's a foundational text to Simulacra and Simulation. If you want to understand that, you probably should read McLuhan first. Which I still did not understand it, but we'll get to that next week. but I felt what I could understand was largely thanks to McLuhan.
Yeah, McLuhan, we could see even reading that short sort of sampler of his ideas that he was way ahead of the game. Again, he's obviously writing this far before the internet is a thing, far before social media, but he's already noticing these patterns of people kind of becoming extended, you could say, into the mediums that they're consuming, the um, entertainment complexes that they're engaged in. It is not simply them sitting outside of it and casually consuming and then turning it off, and you know it is causing people to be fully immersed to the point where you could say a lot of people are inseparable from the medium of the content that's being provided for them, and it's been like that has been amplified multiple times through the invention of the internet.
Yes. The other thing it does is transgress spatial and temporal limitations. It puts us all together instantaneously. It also does this crazy effect of making cause and effect simultaneous, which is in fact a dissolution of meaning in many ways. We understand stories and meaning via a pattern of cause and effect. This will all become terribly relevant, and actually, if you go check out my, well, it won't be, you'll have to scroll up too much, never mind. But I was posting a bit about today, about how the internet cannot be controlled, and that comes somewhat from McLuhan's thought, and an understanding that just that space and time no longer apply the way they once did.
Yeah, and I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some falsity to that. And I don't want to go too much into that because I think we'll elaborate that when we talk about Baudrillard next episode. But one of the key takeaways, I think, is the reality of people sort of becoming immersed or extended into the mediums that are providing the messages. Is there's obviously the downside, right, where people kind of become alienated and isolated in these hyper worlds, drawing on some of these notions that we talked about in the first season. But these hyper worlds, which sort of create these parasocial relationships with people that you never actually have to engage in firsthand. But then on the other hand, the power that comes with that, where you can, in a way, lock yourself. Maybe locking is not the right word, but the way you kind of like tie into these online mediums and transcend boundaries, where we see these people from vastly different countries across the world, all sharing similar ideas and witnessing similar patterns, being able to engage with each other instantaneously. There's positives in that. It's just about how do you balance that with the life world at the same time. How do you tie the reality is that you're tied into this online medium, and most people aren't really going to escape it, and it might not even be in your best interest to escape it. It might kind of be cutting your own foot off. I don't know. Just imagine some stupid analogy that would make sense for this particular situation, and then you get the right idea.
You know what? Just imagine a whole show that's actually good, and then play it in your head while you're listening to this and pretend it was us.
Yeah.
That's a good McLuhan-esque joke, actually. I won't explain. I won't explain it though.
You can do that, and you can enjoy it, and you'll have a great time with it. The point is, you might as well lean into technology as it's developing around you, and make use of it. Because to many of us, it is detrimental, but to many of us, we are transcending the boundaries of space and time to some extent. I think time. Well, that gets really tricky. We won't go into the deep philosophical bullshit surrounding that. We'll just leave it at that and say, find the positives and lean into them, and find the negatives and lean out of them.
Okay, let's say this. Let's say one way or the other, we are forced to confront this new reality. So
that's a great way to sum it up.
So let's do that as best we can, and we'll move it on from there because this stuff really warps the brain. It's too late to think hard like that. We did Lament for a Nation after that.
Was that this season?
It was.
Okay. Well, what's the quick rundown on that? What were there were some interesting ideas that we pulled out that I don't think have been touched on. Do you remember?
I
Jog
don't
my
remember what
brain.
we got that was special. I do remember, well, kind of the perennial problems of Canada and the dissolving effects of liberalism, the acidic effects of liberalism on a nation and on a people.
Hmm. Yeah, Grant kind of gives us, um, and he's very early. He's very early on this, I think, compared to many of the other thinkers. Um, but and then this is obviously because he sees the firsthand effects of the American empire. And we actually talked a bit about some other texts on Canada as well, some Canadian identity stuff. The one text on Canadian nationalism from the 1870s. It was shortly after Confederation.
Yes.
Even that author had mentioned about um, constant ideological attacks, ideological colonization from America into Canada during the early 1800s.
Well, late 1800s, early into. Oh no, early as well. That's correct. It wasn't
He
Canada at
was
the
saying that
point,
it's
but
starting, is
yeah,
I believe, and people can fact check me by listening to that episode, but I believe he had mentioned like 1820s, as early as the 1820s, America was already sort of waging, to some extent, you could call it ideological warfare on Canadians. These notions of manifest destiny, crossing the borders to try and influence Canadian minds, and what Grant gave us in Lament for a Nation is that there is a fundamental difference in the essence of what founded Canada compared to the United States. And this American ideology has always been, American liberalism has always been dangerous to Canadians. Um, One of the main things that I really found um, powerful in that was that he noted a strong sense of the common good in the essence of Canadian identity, in the essence of our founding. That Canadians are more willing to sacrifice individual pleasures for collective thriving,
yeah.
right?
And this value is often called communitarianism, which confuses some people occasionally. It's not communism or whatever. It's
Well, it's
this.
sort of like how people think corporatism means rule of corporations, right?
No, yeah, it's it's if you're new to this, fair enough if you make that mistake. But if you see someone saying Canada's communitarianism, we'll agree with them. Like I think it's a good value, and I think we agree with it.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Grant, because again, that lament for a nation obviously was lamenting. He didn't necessarily have a positive vision of uh, Canadian nationalism being rekindled, but he, I think, I wouldn't necessarily call him black-pilled, and I don't really like using that language, but I would say that his sort of pessimistic outlook on the topic of Canada was dependent on a notion of greater centralization, and he gets into it even more in the text that we'll be talking about as well, recapping technology and empire, um, where he draws on a lot of ideas from Malol and his text, the Technological Society. But there's this whole notion that because of the greater centralization of all these powers through technology and through all these other forces, provided by liberalism, um, and that allows this sort of globalized, homogenous state to occur. That's sort of where he sees the loss of identity being premised on. But the counter, if I remember correctly, this is one of the unique things that we came up out of with this is the counter was sort of this notion that we've been getting from Matt Parrott of the devolutionary effect of technology that we're seeing
Yes.
to this day, where there's the potential for those identities to recapitulate themselves in this overarching framework of technological advancement. while simultaneously things may appear to be centralizing. That doesn't necessarily matter when at the local level there's more access to self determination through the tools provided to us by that same technological advancement, which is where I see uh, Canadians, and that's what our demographic is. Canadians can take the reins once again and don't need to lament for what was lost. There's something new to come out of that.
Absolutely. This Tower of Babel will fall. It's it's inevitable. We're witnessing it. In fact, it might have mostly fallen.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always optimistic. Is I see that I think we're just early. We're just early to the punch, and the longer that we're held up, we're caught up on outdated notions of whether it's ideological systems or regimes of the 20th century, or even outdated notions of where technology is taking us. I would say that would maybe one criticism of Grant is, and you can't really blame him because he was living in the time that he lived in. But those are outdated notions of technology he's relying on for his predictions. And while his predictions on were very prescient in many ways, he didn't see the potential in these the devolutionary powers at hand. And that's where we should be again seeing that we're early to the punch and getting a foot out in front. So
Yeah, building on his work.
yeah,
And so he continues those thoughts in Technology and Empire. Here he's even more
yes,
prescient, and here he's more helpful to us in regard to our quest to use the hyperworld and modernity to our own advantage. Um, he talks about how schooling and the humanities has lost a lot of value through these same dissolving capitalist forces. What else was in there?
well, let's touch on that quickly because now my brain compartments are all fired up again.
Oh, good.
So, like his main point on that was okay. Well, you have liberal democracy as the state religion, and I think it's important that we go with Grant's definition here because he doesn't actually see it as an ideology; he sees it as a religion, and this is I think a lot of people get caught up in this whole ideology is just fake, you know, BS, and then people just use BS. Actually, maybe I don't know if you recognize who I'm sniping at right now, but
Absolutely, actually. That was,
okay,
yeah, yeah. The
yeah,
date is,
some
we're recording this on October 11th, if anyone wants to scroll up, say, Keith Wood's feed right now.
anyways, yeah. So and we'll actually be able to touch on this as well when we get into a later text on the Machiavellians by James Burnham. But there's this notion that yes, it's all ideology, and people are just using this ideology to sort of BS their way into justifications of power. But Grant sees it as a genuine state religion, and Grant comes at the perspective that every state needs their religion, and while they might not always start out as true believers, they end up as true believers in the state religion, regardless of what they claim it's there for. So he notes state religion is liberal democracy. Number two, and this is maybe a side note, but Catholic schools, just because you think you're teaching Catholicism doesn't mean, oh, cool. I mean, Christian schools in general doesn't mean that that's what you're going to be allowed to teach. You're going to get to teach what is in the interest in the state. The state sees you as a technology of control, and if you are making it easy for the state to enact their policies, their control policies, that's what's going to end up, and you're going to get a watered down version of your religion so that you can teach the actual state religion, which is liberal democracy. And we see this to this day. This is where that precedent comes in. But then at the next level, he talks about how the curriculum, especially at the highest levels, gets caught up in this state religion of liberal democracy. So much so that you have to um, basically destroy entire departments so that you can fit your students into this mold required for the upholding of the very system that you want to perpetuate. And you can't really run a so-called liberal democracy with a bunch of people that are well educated in the classics in a genuine sense, where they have a deep understanding of Plato and Aristotle and many of these great thinkers of the past. Because if they have anything other than a critical understanding, and this is one of the key points that he makes, is they'll teach this critical approach to all literature, but they will never allow you to develop a sincere appreciation for literature. Um, so the whole mechanism prevents these students from having this sincere appreciation of particular schools of thought, and therefore, not only are these people tools of your regime, but they are fundamentally very shallow thinkers, very incapable. So, tying back to what NP was saying at the start about the potential for us to jump on, is we're up against a whole system that has created very superficial thinkers, but very limited understandings of much of these ideas present throughout history. And that gives us, because we have access to decentralized tech now through the internet, we can have entire curriculums of our own to combat this and create much more um, ardent and deep thinkers, and provide not only for ourselves, but provide people who are interested in stepping outside of that paradigm access to new ways, or I guess you could even say the old ways, or new approaches to old ways. Um,
One guy who stands out to me in that regard is he was on this show. It's Mike from Imperium Press.
yes,
Seems like a intellectual of another age in the way he approaches
that's
things.
exactly the kind of thing that we would like to see more of. Is um, these people that can have a very wide breadth but deep understanding of so much of what our own history has to offer us, and that's part of one of the things I think we're trying to aim at with this show, is to give a little bit of give you a little bit of access to some of that stuff, specifically for Canadian history, because we like diving into that stuff. But at the same time, various texts, various thinkers that are relevant in shaping you in a way where you can step outside the paradigm and not only critique it but have an alternative.
Yes. Okay. So then before we get on to the last major text, which we did, which was the Machiavellians, we won't recap that too much because you will have heard those episodes. So let's just do a quick Machiavellians, and then I'll make my final points on the season.
Well, do we want to go into that first,
No, because
or
yes, we do, and I know I'm not missing anything.
okay?
I'm
What about
organized
the
it different.
Canadian
Yeah, no, that's
ones?
coming up next.
Okay, okay. Yeah, well, let's do the Machiavellians. What did you want to hit on the recap? Anything particular?
Well, it's a great book to read to understand elite theory, and you should understand these theorists, um, like Machiavelli, like Pareto, Michelle, but also it's their limitations, which we brought up earlier. It's not the world's not pure power politics. Ideology and ideas have an effect, but you cannot deny many of the sort of axioms of elite theory, particularly that culture and power comes down from the elite, and the democratic tendency is when new elites rise from the masses, and the conservative or aristocratic tendency is when they come from the elite class themselves. And most people aren't very good at things. You get those that are, they should rule, and more than that, they should be capable of maintaining their rule. And then so another limitation would be, how do we get virtuous rulers who will rule beyond just their own petty interests.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good good recap of that. And like you said, well, we just did 2 episodes where we talked about this text in pretty great detail. I would say the issue with this text is that it fails to see anything as other than power politics. And now that's sort of the way Burnham kind of has to approach it, like you would with any other science. If you are treating this as a scientific topic, like you're talking, if let's say you're talking about physics, you can't really draw too deeply on other areas and like discredit your own theories.
Or even as Burnham says in his own book, in physics, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Carry on. Oh, sorry.
Basically, if you step outside of your field too much and sort of say, well, yeah, this is what I'm studying here in this field of physics, but this doesn't necessarily ring true in this other particular area of, I don't know, chemistry or biology, whatever. Can't really be doing that all the time if you want to have a purely scientific approach. So I understand that aspect with Burnham.
Yeah, and you assume in physics a flat Earth or a perfect sphere or a perfect triangle, whatever. Fair enough.
And I think that's all well and good. I think there's some good ideas that come out of it, and especially the notion of like group organizations, where you become a leader for an organization, and then where once you came out of the working class itself, and well now you become a leader. And now your entire thing has been dedicated towards acting in a particular way that's geared towards being a better leader. And that's all you do. And that becomes really difficult. And then you have to get paid more. And that's how those are accurate assessments of how a lot of these structures of society work. But the issue comes when you take this sort of approach as the entirety of your vision or of your analysis of the world. And like, oh well, because the iron law of oligarchy says X, then we have to act in a certain way. Because Mosca told me this one thing, I better approach everything the same way. Number one, it's a cynical approach. Number two, it's I would say even a pessimistic approach.
Well, okay.
You're assuming that.
This is very simple.
Make it simple for me.
Okay. The elites are the only ones who promulgate power. Okay, but they're interested in their own petty causes, and I mean petty in the sense they're interested in maintaining their own power and their family's power and their wealth and their prestige. But ideology affects individuals. What you value and what you find good and what you want to do and your own personal interests will be affected by your ideology and ideological concerns, religion, etc. Are elites people? Yes. Do they have their own personal ideologies or ideologies in common? Yes. Therefore, their interests will be affected by ideology. Therefore, it doesn't matter that they're it has to be taken into account along with their other interests.
Okay, there you go. That I think that hits it pretty hard. Now, if sure Keith is going to make a video on this, but it's important that we identify that we made this before he released that video.
Oh yeah, October 11th.
Just in case anyone listens to this and they think that we're copying what Keith said, if we happen to have overlap,
yeah.
or not.
And Keith, don't steal my ideas. Those are my ideas, Keith.
That too. We thought of all of this first. Anyways, obviously limitations in that purely political, cynical approach, and we, as we've seen from these discussions on morals and values and sort of the heroic, there's much more to things than this purely power-driven approach to all of these topics. And I don't know, did you want to quickly touch on the egg report?
Well, no, I want to touch on all what I've now classified as miscellaneous. We had an
Okay,
Australia
sure.
Fair interview, which was really nice and pleasant to talk to. I think there's a question in there that we'll have to examine further, which is notions of ethnogenesis.
Sure.
We talked about Canada and read a really lovely little book, also quite charming. Um, well, we just showed our patriotism there. And then Randy was the most interesting piece of, I'm going to say,
Wait, before
miscellaneous.
we talked on that other. We already touched
Oh,
on this,
yeah.
but we talked on that other Canadian book.
Yep.
Um,
I
which
really
was
liked
I think it
learning
was.
about Thomas Darcy McGee.
Yep, we had that. Um, and there was a lot of the big. I think the big takeaway in that one was they still had this whole question of what is Canadian and what do we do with all of these people from disparate backgrounds, even though they're all technically white. They're all
You mean
the
technically because the Irish are included, but they're all extremely white.
yeah.
Scottish, Anglo, whatever.
Yeah, you had all these people from disparate ethnic backgrounds, mostly Anglo, a little bit of Celtic, and then French, obviously. Um, they were asking at the time of Confederation, well, what do we do with all these various groups? And the answer was, well, we are something distinct. We are something different. We've been here for over 100 years already at that time, and um, it doesn't really do us any good to be fighting each other over disputes of the motherlands, or the fatherlands. What's the point in that when we have something that is our own here? And that was a big question of the project of a Canadian identity in the beginning. And I think when we'll tackle some text on the Canadian questions later on. I'll get more into detail on that. But the important thing is you could say that that was where the ethnogenesis started. And there are many of us, I would include myself in here, and I'm sure you would as well, that feel like you can only identify as Canadian in some way or
Yeah,
another.
while
This
still
thing
while
that
still
was
recognizing the component parts.
yeah, and I can say like, look, I have Scottish, Irish, French, and German ancestry. We can never go to any of those places and say, well, this is just the same for me. This is just the same home because I could never do that. I'm not European. I don't fit into Europe whatsoever. I've got my own history here, and I think that was a key thing that many Canadians are never taught is that there was a distinct ethnogenesis that was. I think I would say it was completed for those of us that have been here for for me personally, like family with over 400 years of history here. That is all we can be now, and that many of us in that situation are kind of left out of the equation when some people still have their ties from a generation or two ago to their homeland, but many of us don't have that. So it is an important factor to consider that there was an actual attempt that was followed through on to bring these identities together into a singular notion of Canada as a distinct ethnicity, and that, of course, this occurred as well in contrast to the development of an American ethnicity, and we are brothers in that sense, where we both are these new world um, uh, identities, that came from Europe, but are still distinct and unique on their own. And there was something there from the start, and we know that now.
Absolutely. We've got the receipts.
Hmm.
Um, we'll talk a lot more about that in the upcoming season. Now, the last thing is hard to know where to fit it in, but and the question of morality, I guess, is what I would put it. And it was
Yeah, we can. I
Eggman's.
guess we could say we could see where this weaves in
Actually,
now.
no, now's a good chance to say Randy wrote a nice review of our review
Oh
that I
yeah.
have, and I felt bad for harshing on him a few times about
No, he needed to
editing.
hear it. I
Um,
had someone tell me that yes, they agree that he does need an editor.
okay, well, it's neither here nor there. I enjoy his writing, and I hope he continues to do it with or without one. Um, but also, thanks for reviewing our review, Randy. Um, but so he talked. We'll focus on the one which was a warning against identifying with this anti-hero,
Yes.
where you want everyone else to live a good moral life, but you're too far gone, and so you can behave how you want, and it's a pride thing. Really, is what he boiled it down to, and I think he's right.
Yeah. So I think some of this weaves with our with many of the texts that we've discussed. And we could say, because there's this whole notion of people who, like you said, they don't feel like they deserve to they don't deserve the good to happen to them, right? And that kind of mindset just leads you back to evil, I would say, because you feel like, okay, I'll be the one. In some way or another, you're I don't know, you think you're taking up a cross because you're taking the evils of the world on your back, and oh, I'll lean into degeneracy because I'm just hard edge. But really, all you do is you just spew more of that garbage back into the world, and whether that is, leaning into um, sort of gluttony, or you eat like shit, or you don't do work, you don't do physical work, or you know I agree with people, you would say, leeching benefit, well, I won't even call it leeching, but like using benefits, but that shouldn't make you lazy, right?
No,
And you shouldn't be diving into casual sex or pornography, or there's so much, or again, like we talked about earlier, this whole I'm going to be this edgy, resentful guy, because despite the system. But like, who are you really beating when you're doing that? Who like you're not. It's not like you're getting one over than the system, because you turn into this, resentful degenerate. Wow, you're edgy online, but you haven't really changed anything in real life. You aren't a hero, and you might think you're like some sort of anti-hero, but what has that really got you? And that's not what we need when we talk about this notion of, you know um, leaning into the hyper world in a way that benefits people, or um, taking a proper resistance to evil, or um, aiming yourself at the highest good, or the Canadian identity thing, align ourselves with this notion of the common good, and trying to achieve that. When you go back into your bad habits, and you think it's okay because you're not worthwhile anyways, then you don't provide a positive net gain in any of the directions that the heroic should be striving for, and that kind of makes you worthless. I think that's the main takeaway from what Randy gave us in that article.
yep, yep, important stuff. Now let's move on from recap, and let's look into the future a little bit here. What's
Are,
some
are you
stuff?
are you still here?
I am.
I can't hear you.
Uh oh. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, so we're back up. Okay, so Charles, yeah, let's look to the future now. What do you hope for season 3?
Well, we already have a couple texts that we set up in advance, that we've been working on in the reading group. So we have, to kick it off, simulacra and simulation, and we'll have a lot of interesting ideas to uncover there. Unfortunately, it's been split up by a couple different other things. So who knows if when we get there, we'll get there. We'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah,
Then we got a good text on the Canadian question. I think that will be very revealing of some of the questions and concerns surrounding the development of Canadian identity.
maybe Mike
I
would like
think,
to come back on for that one.
yeah, we can see. We can even we can give that a shot. See if we can toss him a link on something like that. We also will dive back in George Grant again. philosophy in the mass age, which I think, um, from my skim reading, and I've already brought this up, but I think that looks like another excellent text. I can't get enough of Grant. He's a very interesting writer, a very interesting thinker, and he gives a little bit more. He expounds a little bit more in other areas in philosophy, which is, I think, is actually in general a weakness in our sphere. Although we have a lot of intelligent philosopher guys that are kind of leading the way, and I think they're doing good work, and they're on the right track. I think still at the lower, or you could say the mid tiers, or sort of the common discourse that occurs is full of people that pretend to be, or to pretend to aim at this notion of being like a cultured thug, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, but the cultured aspect generally doesn't amount to any level of knowledge of philosophy, um, other than some reading of Nietzsche and quoting of Evola and stuff like that, and that's not really worthwhile if we, tying back into what we were talking about with the failures of our current education system to produce people that are well rounded and can think deeply. We need to overcome, again, for people that are claim to want to be cultured thugs, we need them to overcome the limitations that we currently have. And I think this text from Grant will have a lot of a good baseline for ideas. Like, he has a whole chapter on natural law, for example, which is something that seems to be butchered in our spheres quite a bit. So
Good.
those are our quick off the start.
I'd again like to request some C.S. Lewis on that reading list.
We sure can get into that for sure. I think a good one that I have that's been sitting in my basement forever is That Hideous Strength. Is part of it. I think it's part of a trilogy. So I think it might be a last in a trilogy, but I've heard that one is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Wait, is that of his Mars trilogy?
Maybe I'm not sure. Basically, it's just the one where you have some secret group of evil things ruling
Okay. Well,
it
okay.
all.
We'll look into that some more. Okay. Well, there's a lot of ideas we're tossing around here. Maybe doing some parts of the show live recorded. Maybe
Yeah,
like all
we
or
can see
some.
that.
We were talking possibility of a recurring guest host who would join us, possibly. And we're not looking for resumes. We have one picked out if that's the case.
We'll have more interviews.
Yeah,
We
a lot more
can.
CCC, which is Cope Country Checkup, which nobody ever knows. I don't know. I've failed to identify that segment properly, obviously, but it's just when we have normal guests who haven't wrote
And
anything.
we'll also have interesting. Well, our CCC guests are all interesting, but I mean more so.
Like writers in the sphere.
Well, not just writers, but other personalities in the mix.
Sure. Do we have any
We'll have
lined
people like
up that
that.
I don't know about? You don't have to name them, but
Well, not more than what we talked about. I'm sure we can pull anything out that we want. No, not anything, but a lot.
okay.
I'm sure we
We'll
can.
have Richard Spencer on the show one of these
No, we will
episodes.
not.
Okay. I want to drill in.
No, shut the fuck
I want
up.
to ask about these Swiss mushroom burgers.
Yeah,
Um.
you can just eat one in your local place. Like, who cares what he says?
Okay. No, it won't be Richard Spencer. That I promise too.
I don't even get why who eats mushrooms on a burger? Who puts mushrooms on a burger? What a
Okay.
great way to ruin a burger.
You know,
Fucking moron.
I also like a Swiss mushroom burger, and you
Yeah,
can
he's
get
so
them at a number
stupid.
of places. That's hot
That is
stuff.
so
It's hot
stupid.
stuff.
Yep,
Um,
it's
let's see. Yeah. So you know, on a technical note, my last streaming software just crashed, but I think it might lead to a better solution. Um, we're gonna get Charles out of his noisy bunker, and we're gonna find something for that. We're gonna get him a girlfriend this season. Actually, that's my pledge. We're gonna find Charles a girlfriend this season.
why.
Because if this stream can't get us both girlfriends, then what's even the point?
Man, I don't want anyone listening. If you're listening to me and you're a girl, stop.
Stop listening, but before you do, send them a nice cheeky message.
No, because if you are listening already, that just sounds like you listen to us, you're a chick, that sounds like a big red flag if you're asking me.
You make a solid point there.
But maybe not, who knows? But my opinion, my 1-2 take, I don't know. That sounds like a red flag. But maybe you're cool. I doubt there are any females listening.
I think probably 50% of our audience is female.
That's not even in the cards. That's not even close. It'd be a funny.
They're all hot babes too. If you're a hot babe and you're listening to this, send Charles a message.
Do not do that.
He's Catholic, so don't make it too spicy. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just to touch up on what we predict. We'll have even more text on Canada. I would like to find more topics to discuss, and I'm hoping that some people in our spheres give us some articles. Because you've been doing a lot. We've shifted to some longer form texts.
Yeah.
The beginning, the way we started off with just short articles for people in our sphere. So I would like to see more publishing. More journals publishing. Hurry up so you give us content. And then maybe
firstness has been out for how long? We need secondness. We need secondness now. Maybe even a thirdness.
Well, they already did 3. That's what we did. Thirdness.
Well, fourthness
then. The third edition of their.
Right.
That third edition's been out for over a year, I think. So
those
guys need to hurry up.
You know what? I can think of another Canadian intellectual who's.
Yeah, don't even. That's not even. We don't even need to. That's,
no.
I would love to have that content on this show right now. But if we sit around and wait for it to happen, we might never get across our desks. So we can hope, but we might have to find new avenues.
Yeah, if you don't, then I'm just interviewing dimes about Star Trek for the next 13 episodes.
No, what?
I'm trying to threaten them. I'm trying to bully them, Charles.
Bully who? With what? You gonna just give them like some stupid garbage like Star Trek?
This is a threat. This is a genuine and credible threat. I will make the next 13 episodes with Star Trek, like Red Letter Media style, if you do not write more articles.
Yeah, that's such a dumb threat, though. Because, I mean, if it was me, I would just not listen.
That's not an option. Listening will be mandatory.
No.
Okay, well, I gotta work on my threats, but that'll also be something we can work on in season 2.
Don't even bring up Star Trek. I don't want to hear about Star Trek. I don't care if it's a threat. I don't want to hear about Star Trek. I've never watched it. I'm never going to watch it. I don't want to listen about it.
Yeah, nor does anybody else. So, but you know what? I do have an Aliens show going on just for October that me and Field are doing, and it's called Cope to Cope AM, and it's a live call-in show like Coast to Coast Art Bell style. So if you have any paranormal stories, check it out if it's still going, or check out the recordings on our channel. This the Great White North was kind enough to host.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you should call into the next one, Charles, and tell us some spooky stories.
Yeah, if I'm not busy, then I can get on another show.
Yeah. Yeah, your dance ticket's pretty full, but that's good. Better to be busy than not busy.
That's what I always say. All right. Well, I feel like that's enough for tonight. I'm You got sleepy.
Yeah, I'm way past optimum brain power here. We'll see you guys all real soon.
See ya.
Bye.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. Join the reading group if you're interested in that. Go listen on, I don't know, whatever, Podbean or whatever
Yeah,
thing we're
and
on.
donate to the Global Minority Initiative.
Yeah, we have that in the link too. So now we can say goodbye.
Okay.